The Tomorrow People episode 16, Endgame. Now, this episode is definitely my favorite episode we've had so far. It was almost like a season finale type of episode with some of the events that, went down. And, I love, some of the previous episodes. My favorites have been where we got, like, the flashbacks of the main, like, pretty much the top three leaders of the Tomorrow People. And, those are always good episodes because we get, sort of that in depth information on their characters and who they used to be before, you know, forming this group of Tomorrow People. And in this episode, we get information on, like the opposite side of that. And they aren't all, bad guys, but two out of three are really bad guys at this point, in the story. We get, Steven's father who is, dead. So we barely had any information on him as a character outside of a couple of flashbacks that he was in, and other than that, it's people saying like this is the type of person he was. So we got to see him and get to see his character, and he's sort of the not cocky, but he's like this sort of funny type of guy. He's fairly relaxed, but when it comes down to like he says, like I don't really like mysteries and stuff. He wants to go through the world and figure out who he is and his species is, but he doesn't like when people you know have a plan but they don't really tell everything about it. And then the other two components in these flashbacks is, of course, the founder who has been made out to be like the ultimate bad guy in the series, where he, does these experiments on his daughter. He, did the previous experiments where he basically made her think she, went to college and did this and did that when she was really just on the operating table all this time. And then the last we saw her, he took her to do, a different experiment, which we find out in this episode was to actually power a device that he planned on using Steven's father for. And then the third, point in the flashbacks is of course Jedekiah, who, although we see him pretty much every episode, we still don't know really anything about him. Like, I don't think we even had a flashback with him in it, so far outside of, just like with Steven's dad, like it's been really the same thing. Like everything's present tense. So those three components, we got to see a lot more of them and how they, you know, like the coolest thing was it showed when Steven's father first used his power and when he saved Jedekiah's life, and then it advances from there and how, Jedekiah in the past was just he was just a scientist, and it was like, my brother has these powers. We have to see what are the limitations, what are the strengths and weaknesses, what can and what cannot happen with this species. And he's doing these experiments, and he's it's him and his brother, and then they meet the founder, and things change from there. And then they kind of skip forward after they have the little meeting at the diner, and it goes to, and that's towards the end of the episode where it's Jedekiah and the founder, and they're kind of having an argument because Jedekiah at this point, he wants things to go public, and they kind of all do, but he feels like not enough money is being given to specific points of research and stuff. And that kind of showed their split, and I'm assuming that Steven's father found it, or decided to go with the founder rather than go with his brother, and that's how Ultra came about. And then over time Jedekiah decided, I just have to find my way into this, otherwise I'm gonna be screwed up. So, and kind of just left out with no answers and no way to figure out what this species is and things like that. But an amazing episode. Love the flashbacks, and then of course the present tense. Everything was just ramping up towards the end of this episode, and I love, like I said, it was kind of like a season finale type of episode because so many things changed. Like by the end of this episode, Jedekiah, he's taken off because of course his plan was to get rid of the founder, who, like I said, has been built up as this horrible person because of the things he did with his daughter, and excuse me, just his overall demeanor. Like, he's a cool villain, and that's just a fact. He is one of the bad guys in the show, and he's made out to be the ultimate bad guy because he's over Jedekiah, but he's also a tomorrow person. So he has all of these powers, and even though of course he can't kill people, he can of course defend himself and use all of the humans that he's hired to kill for him. And in this episode, the ending when his daughter ends up getting killed, and he kind of breaks down, and he has his moment where he gets to speak, and he shows that he wasn't the one that was enforcing all these murders and things like that. It was Jedekiah. He was the one who enforced these rules. He's the one who could stop this and stop that. But it's just an amazing ending, and his daughter gets killed, and he's still not a good guy, but in that scene at least, he does seem fairly serious about how the only thing he really wanted was to stop the bloodshed, and he's holding his daughter in his hands, and you kind of feel for him because it's like he's been led to built up as this horrible person, and then it just goes right back to overall it's always going to be Jedediah, who is incredibly smart, and you know his lack of superpowers is replaced by his genius. Like, he's an evil genius, and he kind of shows that in multiple parts of this episode, like him talking to John when he says everything I did was really leading up to this exact moment because I knew that you would be the one to basically kill the founder, and that's why I needed you to do it, because you'd have powers and you wouldn't be stopped by the limitation of murder. And John saying all this stuff like, you turned me into a killing machine. He's just like, and he was like, you ruined my life. And he was just like, yeah, I did that. And that's like, he was just completely plain about it because he knew what he did, and he was just like, I don't care. I have my end game, and that's I have to do this crappy stuff so that I can achieve it, and that doesn't happen. And one thing that really caught me off guard, and I don't know if anyone can explain it to me, it would really help. The T chip that was put in the founder's pocket, I still have no idea why it like dissolved or like exploded pretty much. I don't know if Steven did that. It seemed like the founder himself did that. That's what I'm assuming. Like, he's that powerful that T chips don't affect him. I'm hoping that's what it was, and because I'm not sure. Like, it still didn't make sense that it like just dissolved to me. Like, I feel like it could have just he could have like crushed it or something way more realistic than it just like burst into tiny little particles. But that could be how strong he really is. I don't know. But if you guys know 100% what that was, then please put that below for me. But I'm pretty sure that's what it was. That he was actually so powerful that T chips don't even affect him, and he proved that by destroying the T chip and not attacking Steven and John. But I love the ending. It was really crazy. And then of course when they go back and they find that Jedediah threatened Russell and had him take him to Ultra, they see that Jedediah this whole time, all he wanted was the founder dead. And as soon as he wasn't 100% sure that would happen, he was like, I got to get out of here because this guy has powers, and of course he ranks above me because he's the founder, and he's gonna have me killed off by other humans. He can't do it himself, but he'll order somebody to just shoot me up. And so he takes off, and I cannot wait for next week's episode because it seems really good. Like, Jedediah is on the run now, and the founder himself in the preview says like the Ultra you knew no longer exists. So I'm curious to see just how crazy things are from this point on, and how the rest of the season goes, because I would assume we have to be fairly close to the end of the season because most shows are starting to wrap up right now. But I love this episode, definitely my favorite. And not to skip over, because of course I was talking all about the main story and just how good it was. Another great part of this episode was the side story, which was Kara finding her sister, who was the breakout. And I knew it was her sister as soon as she said it was like, as soon as she mentioned like, it's a girl, and I haven't felt this connection since Steven. Like, it felt like, I wasn't just hearing it, it was like inside me. I knew I was just like, what if it's her sister? And of course it turned out to be her sister, and it was a really good side story with her, being able to see her sister again, and her having to deal with the fact that her sister was kind of ripped out of, her normal life, which was actually amazing and unique in itself, because she was going off, she was a dancer, and she was going off to try to win a scholarship and stuff and go to like a dance academy and things like that. So she had a really unique life, and it wasn't just, oh, I'm just day to day going to school or anything like that, and now I have superpowers. So she was like really, really hit with the fact that if I have these powers, I'm gonna be hunted for the rest of my life, and I can't live the normal life that I've had this whole time. And it was really cool to see Kara have to kind of deal with that, and kind of be the sister to this this girl who's been growing up normal this whole time, and at the same time she's a stranger because she's been gone most of this time. So it was a cool little connection between them, and in the end, she gives her the T-chip watch and says like, this will suppress your powers and stuff like that. So I do hope she comes back into the series just because that's a huge thing. Like one of the things I thought of as soon as it was her sister, when I thought, they're gonna have their small talk and things like that. The first thing I thought of was like the flashback episode when when we saw her get her powers and her dad like kicked her out of the house basically. Like he kind of acted like he cared and he gave her money, and then she read his mind and he said, if I remember right, he said like, we're better off without you or something like that, or like, we're better off without her anyway. And if her sister comes back and she does see her dad and stuff like that, I think it'll be an amazing episode because it'll be one of those just deeply emotional ones where she has to deal with the fact that her father kicked her out, and she's probably past that now. But if she did run into her father, you know all the these years later, it'll be so different for her to have to just relive those moments, and then her sister would be finding this out and stuff for the very first time anyway. I think, hopefully your sister does come back. Even if that doesn't happen, it would be great to see your sister come back anyway because, it's when characters come from like the main character's past, it's always an amazing episode. And I think, if they bring her sister back in, probably not this season, but sometime next season, if hopefully they get a second season. If they bring her in, I think it could lead to some really good plot points for the show. Even if she does decide, I don't ever want to actually use the powers that I have. But not to skip over that, it was an amazing side story, and I was glad to see that sort of surprise element within the episode where it was her sister who was a tomorrow person, and they had a real serious dynamic talk. Like, you want to live your life, you don't want to be the person I am and stuff like that. So it was a cool episode of these two sisters, you know, both being the same, but at the same time being very, very different people. So it was really, really good. And, it kind of just accompanied the main episode in the sense that, or the main storyline, I mean, because the main story was just really intense and stuff. And this one, it was, a lot more laid back, and it was the more, um, I guess, soft-hearted, emotional side of the episode is where, the main storyline was like really intense and like, panic side of sort of emotional type of storyline. But ultimately, love the episode. Cannot wait for next week to see just how things get even crazier. But comment below, let me know what you guys thought of it. Favorite parts, least favorite parts, and how do you guys think things are gonna go? Like, do you guys think Jedediah is gonna end up dead, or do you guys think the founder's gonna end up dead? Because even though we've gotten this storyline and it's like Jedediah is the ultimate bad guy, you don't really kill the ultimate bad guy off unless someone worse is gonna come along. So I just don't see Jedediah losing out, even though everyone's gonna be coming after him. But comment below, let me know what you guys think, and thanks for watching.